This is one of my favorite quotes, and I think it's extremely apropos for dignity of experience and the people that you work with, and for me as a person with a disability. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. A lot of times I've noticed, good or bad, well-intended, that in service provision, you may have a vision of what independence or inclusion or community transition means, and the person that you're serving has a different vision of what they want. So you have to find where the two meet, and maybe you're worried about safety and health and things of that nature. But you're really a team, and you might be steering the boat, but the person with a disability is the navigator telling you where they want to go. And you just have to help them get there safely in the least amount of steps possible, without compromising who they are and what they wish for on their wish list, their vision board, whatever they bring to you. And I'm going to start off with a story, since we've talked about flight already with airplanes. Something else that flies, if you haven't figured out with the name of my company and my scarf and logo on my wheelchair wheels, I love butterflies. And actually the airplane story reminded me of my dad. Today is the anniversary of his death, so I'm quite proud to do a keynote sort of and honor him with everything that he taught me, being a leader in the community and being a good speaker and a good advocate for myself, because that was something that both of my parents really instilled in me, to speak for myself and get what I want out of the world. But there's this story that I really love. It's kind of a sad story, so I'm going to start off sad. I started to have this as the closing story, and then I realized the ending's kind of sad, and I don't want you to end on a sad note. Maybe we'll have a melancholy beginning and bring you up by the end. The Man and the Butterfly. There was this man who loved walking through the woods on his property, and loved watching, the birds building their nests and laying eggs and starting families, and loved watching the butterflies in their cocoons and emerging from them. Well, one day when he was walking out on his property, he saw this butterfly that was struggling in its cocoon, or chrysalis actually, and he was quite worried about it. He didn't know what to do. It was struggling really, really hard, and then it got still, and it wasn't moving anymore. So he thought about it for a while, kept on walking, and then on his way back, he went back to where that chrysalis was hanging, and it still wasn't moving. So he took out his pocket knife, and he cut a little bit bigger hole out of that chrysalis so that the butterfly would have a greater access to get out of that cocoon, that chrysalis, and fly. As soon as he cut the hole, the butterfly emerged and immediately fell to the ground. It flew a little bit, but low. Not that long after, the butterfly, because it wasn't able to fly, died. And the reason that it died was because part of the butterfly's natural process was its struggle. Its struggle to emerge from its own chrysalis. It needed to build up its muscles and stimulate all of those the internal juices, the blood inside the butterfly's body, their version of it, and strengthen those wings so that they could fly free. So that's kind of like as you're being born, having that opportunity to go to the gym real quick and get strong and before you head out into the world. So the butterfly was deprived of that opportunity to struggle and to build its wings, all because somebody just wanted to help. And the man ended up doing more harm than good. So What we all strive for as service providers and advocates for the people that we work for and with is to do the least harm and do the utmost we can to help prepare that person for the world outside. But part of that journey is actually setting them free to stumble, to stress a little, to struggle a little, because through struggle you figure things out. Eventually, when you're struggling, you stop cowering in a little ball, afraid. You eventually emerge stronger and figure things out. Or you eventually emerge stronger and strong enough to ask somebody, I'm not sure how to do this. Do you know how I can do this? Do you have any suggestions? So we all have to work on our ability when we work with the people that we work with, to give them the opportunity to emerge and give them the open floor to ask questions, invite questions, rather than telling. Offer information, but without telling, this is what you should do. Maybe tell them what you have to offer, a list of things and options, but allowing them the space and the respect to tell you what they really want. This is me as a baby. I believe I was about 6 months old in this picture. When I was born, actually even before my mother gave birth to me, she was told that I would not live to see my first birthday. But if I did, I would never talk, walk, or function quote unquote normally, whatever normal is. It's a setting on a drive. That I would never have a quality life. That I would never live independently. I would never drive, go to school, go to college. I would need 24/7 care, maybe institutionalization. Matter of fact, after I was born, because of spina bifida, I had quite a few health problems. She was encouraged when she was feeling better after the labor to just leave me and go home. And they would make sure I was taken care of, whatever that means. Well, for a dead person, I think I'm doing pretty good. I'm still alive. I was educated in the public school system. Mainstream was what it was called at the time. I just called it going to school. And I did receive services through the Exceptional Children's Program, not only for physical disabilities, to accommodate my wheelchair, braces and crutches and physical therapy and all of that good stuff, but for being academically gifted in reading. And as I've grown up, I've used vocational rehabilitation, VR's independent living program, Center for Independent Living, even worked for a Center for Independent Living in Charlotte for 4.5 years, physical therapy, and due to my biological father's experience in Vietnam and his exposure to Agent Orange, my spina bifida qualified me for VA benefits and some services. Limited services, but services nonetheless. And mental health counseling, because I do happen to have a diagnosis of depression that I've managed pretty well. My activity in NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, employment services. Not only did I go through vocational rehab for employment services, but I used the Employment Security Commission. I figured everybody else was using them, why shouldn't I use them? I didn't necessarily have to use the quote-unquote disability services. I could use other services like everybody else. Amputee services. I became an amputee after a long bout with a life-threatening infection in my left leg and sought services through the Amputee Coalition of America. And for whatever reason, as soon as I talked with another peer before having my leg amputated, She said, I think you'd be a good fit to be a peer mentor. I said, well, I haven't even had my leg removed yet. She said, no, but I think you would be a good peer mentor, and I think you need to do this. So, but I haven't even grieved it yet. It hasn't. I think you would make a good peer mentor. So as soon as you get through this, we have a class, and you need to go through this. How many days after the hospital did I? It was about 5 days after I got out of the hospital. My husband Brian, sitting right here, drove me to a prosthetics office where they were holding a class for peer mentors through the Amputee Coalition of America, and I got my certification as a peer visitor. So I could work with up-and-coming amputees, pre-op amputees, or amputees that have been amputees for a while and still had not connected with peer. And I've enjoyed all of that very much. And I've used personal attendant services. And I have a really funny story coming up in one of the later slides about personal attendant services. I went to college and earned a bachelor's degree in writing. And I just applied for graduate school at Widener University for their online Masters of Social Work program.
Go social work.
I'm not sure about the work part, but I'm real social, so I'm hoping they'll pay me to be real social. I became a professional businesswoman using all of my professional and life experience as a woman with a disability. Speaker, coach, consultant. And my husband Brian and I own our own accessible home, and we've been happily married since 2005. So. I love this quote by Chris Lyons. I don't know how many of you know Chris Lyons, but he's done a lot of work with direct support services in Michigan, Missouri, other states like that. That which makes us most human is our ability to enjoy our successes by having the ability to own our own failures. There's that key point there, allowing someone to make their own mistakes and learn. I don't really call them mistakes, I call them lessons. Unless some real harm has been done, they're always lessons. And even if some harm has done, if you've survived it, come out the other side, there's always a lesson in it. It is that contrast, that yin and that yang, if you will, of human nature that allows us to truly be a person, a true human being. So allowing someone that you work with, that you provide services to stumble a little, figure it out, giving them some support along the way, but not controlling, not pulling what my mother used to call the bubble wrap and duct tape move, where you're just wrapping them in a cocoon of duct tape and bubble wrap so that they never get hurt. You know, I don't want anybody to ever be harmed living independently or living out in the community. But, you know, you could come to harm, you could get a paper cut sitting here, you know, flipping through your slides. You could fall on somebody's purse that I've got sitting right here, I guess I need to move, as you're walking through the room. Things happen. But we do what we can to try and prepare. And the rest of it has to just fall into place sometimes. I hear from some of my colleagues in advocacy that James is quite an urban legend. I've never met James. This is apparently a composite of in the intellectual and developmental disabilities world. But James has an intellectual disability, and he wants to be an astronaut. How in the world are his service providers going to accomplish that? His grandfather's retired from NASA, so he hears about space all the time. He loves the stars, loves all the planets. And what we figure out is there's different ways to get him
a little bit closer to his goal of wanting to be an astronaut. Doing a vision board, which is a collage of pictures and magazine cutouts and phrases and quotes that would motivate him and help him shape his vision of what it means to him to be an astronaut. Mind mapping, the maps and path plans for person-centered planning. That could be a means of helping James get a little bit closer. Making a wish list. Leading up to him becoming an astronaut, what are some steps that we need to take to get him closer to that goal? Let James tell a story about what it means to him to be an astronaut. So, the people that worked with James and supported him said, well, what does James like about astronauts? What does being an astronaut mean? Astronauts have a uniform. People respect astronauts. Girls like astronauts. I like that one. Astronauts' names are on their shirts. They have name badges. They have a lot of responsibility. Astronauts know a lot about space. They better. Might get lost between Mars and the moon. Astronauts are involved in their community. I'm sure after they come home and their zero gravity levels in their body have kind of acclimated and they get their feet on the ground, they decide, I want to brag about space to the women's club and the Rotary breakfast and that sort of thing, and show my slideshow of Mars. One thing that one of his support workers noticed is he had not been to the planetarium in his community in years. He lived with his grandparents, and they were getting on in years. And they didn't really go out much. They were homebodies. And he had not been to the planetarium since he was very, very, very small. So his support workers took him to the planetarium. And what happened was James ended up volunteering at the planetarium. He met a man that was a greeter who did not have a disability. He was retired, who was passing out maps and directing people around the planetarium and the different exhibits. And any questions that the patrons that visited the planetarium had, he was able to answer. And if he couldn't answer the question, he knew who to direct them to. So James ended up volunteering in that position when this elderly man retired completely and decided he wanted to just kind of tootle around at home. And then he got so good at the volunteering, he said, I want a part-time job here. Do you think I can get a part-time job here? So his service team said, I don't know, let's talk to your boss. So he ended up with a part-time job after some practice and moving forward with some of his responsibilities after a time. And he ended up with a part-time job, and I want to start going to work by myself. I don't want to just have a ride. Well, how are you going to get there? I'd like to take the bus. Well, have you ever ridden the bus by yourself? No, but I want to learn. Okay, let's learn how to ride the bus. And he got really good about learning how to navigate the routes and looking at the bus schedule, getting to know the drivers. And if anything in the bus schedule changed, the drivers were able to say, hey, James, you're going to want to take such and such a bus today because this one's going to be going somewhere else. Okay, great. And then eventually, he met a girl. You got a job, you got a way to work, got a lot of responsibility, feeling good, and now you're ready to impress the girls. Oh, and he has his own uniform with his name on his shirt. And his friends call him Starman. It's really important for James to be a part of his community. Now he's living in his own apartment. one of his coworkers had a tenant in his upstairs apartment over their garage. And James had been talking about, I want to live on my own. I don't want to live too far from Grandma and Grandpa, but I want to live on my own for a while. So one of his coworkers said, well, let's talk to your grandpa about my bonus room apartment over our garage. How's that sound? That sounds awesome. So he ended up with his own apartment, connecting with a coworker. So it's all about connection, connecting with your community, not just within the service provision, but being creative, connecting with the bus driver, connecting with a customer or a patron at the planetarium, connecting with someone in the community. And it's really important, where do your services and someone else at your table that does a different service, how do they overlap? And how many of your services could provide something 3 different ways? And but what I mean by looking for 3-in-1 services, how many of us realize when we need a personal attendant that you can not only hire a personal attendant for personal care like bathing and feeding and dressing or caring for you when you're sick, but you can also have an attendant, depending on the service, get your groceries for you or help you with your groceries, run errands for you, go get your medication, check in on you occasionally. I have difficulty from my wheelchair making my own bed. When I first moved out on my own, about once a week my mom or my dad would come over and help me make the bed and change the sheets. And that was great, but I started to realize that my dad was disabled veteran, managing his house with 2 or 3 cats at their house. And we're a kitty family, we love cats. And yay, cats. New buddy over here. I love dogs too, but I'm partial to kids. So I noticed that he was getting on in years, and it was getting a little bit tiresome for him to manage his stuff at home and help my mother, deal with the cats, and then come over and help me. More than happy to do it. But how can I be independent, even though it's difficult for me to do by myself? How can I do it my own way? So I called an attendant service, and I asked them what their services were, found out that they could provide me someone to help with some light cleaning, help with a little bit of grocery shopping, because I can chat up the nice bag boy to walk my groceries to the car, but I can't fold him up and put him in the trunk and take him home. And some of them are so cute, you want to take them home. But their mothers are a problem. Darn it. And it's kind of hard when you're living on your own if you don't know people in your apartment complex, the high turnover of tenants around you. So you don't want to ask your neighbor sometimes unless you really know who they are. So that's the problem that I was having. I would think of a neighbor I wanted to ask, and by the time I needed them, they'd moved. Sure, I'll come over and help you anytime. Here's my cell phone if you need something. Just holler, and by the time I needed something, they'd moved. So I ended up hiring an attendant. Went through several different ones. They either didn't like the hours or I was too independent. They were used to having maybe an elderly woman that was in bed full time, that they would bathe and dress and feed and do significant care for. They weren't used to the woman that just got home from an 8-hour day of work and just needed somebody to help with groceries and change the sheets and then leave. Well, I had an attendant at one point that got a little overly personal, the overly personal attendant. She was emptying my trash, and my now husband and I were just dating. And not to challenge any of your values or sensibilities, we were quite familiar with each other before we were married. We had both kicked the tires before we bought the car. And when she was dumping out my trash in my bedroom, there was a condom wrapper. And she wanted to have what she called a come to Jesus meeting with me about how important it was for saving myself and that this shouldn't be happening. I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. Why are we having this conversation? You're not my mother. Maybe our values are different, but your values are yours, my values are mine, and I think that's another thing that we need to realize as service providers and even as peer mentors. Your values are not going to be the same. But I eventually had to call the supervisor and say, she's a sweet lady, love her to death, but she's already chewed on me because the last time he was here, he helped me with laundry, and a pair of his underwear and socks had static cling and were stuck to one of my nightgowns when we were, folding my laundry. And she chastised me and said she wasn't being paid to do his laundry. And now she's chastising me because of a condom wrapper. Can we find somebody else? And that's something else that you need to help the people that you serve. Encourage them if they're having a problem to speak up. They don't have to be rude about it or, yell and scream, unless it warrants it, but they need to know that they have a voice and have a right to complain or change their worker. So life takes a lot of balancing acts every day, particularly after I lost my leg. I had dealt for quite a few years on and off with a pressure sore on my left foot that would heal and then break down and then open back up. Then it would get infected and then it would close again and I would be, sent on my way and then it would open again. And finally, the infection just decided to take a timeshare into my leg. And it was making me sicker and sicker. And I finally decided that it was time to have the leg amputated so that maybe the infection in my leg had won the war or won the battle, but I was going to win the war by not letting my leg kill me. So in 2010, I had my leg amputated, and I've never been healthier. I've got some weight to lose, but I've never been healthier. I'm a lot healthier than I was with that hidden, unseen infection going up a lot further inside my leg than I actually thought it was. So that saved my life having to make that hard choice. When I was released from the hospital, they offered me a commode chair, a very rickety, not very sturdy, arms that didn't move on both sides commode chair with the typical bucket in the bottom that, God love you, honey, you were willing to change for me. Husband of the year right here. But it wasn't going to work because I couldn't transfer into it because the arms didn't go up. And I asked them if they had one because I had seen one in a medical supply catalog. No, we don't have those in stock. And this is what Medicare will pay for. Well, it won't work even if Medicare pays for it. So I had a nice piece of furniture in our living room for a while. Matter of fact, do we still have it? Yeah, I think we finally donated it to somebody who could really use it. Yeah, I should. She said that I should have put it outside and planted flowers in it. Pretty much. I made a bird bath out of it. Yeah. Well, once we got me a little bit better acclimated at home, physical therapy began, because even being in a wheelchair full-time, your transfers, when you don't have both your legs, your weight distribution's different. The way your hips hang when you transfer from wheelchair to car, to bed, to the toilet are different. So this Weeble was really wobbly. And I asked the physical therapist what kind of exercises we could do to help me with my balance. He was a very young physical therapist. I don't think he had been certified very long and had not had many clients to work with through my attendance service. And he just very matter-of-factly, he was sitting on our couch. Brian was at work. And he just very matter-of-factly said, you know, I really don't know how to help you with that. You may need to have the other cut off. I was just getting acclimated to being an amputee. I had lost my leg. I'm dealing with typical body image issues, even though the leg didn't work and I wasn't walking on it. Still had 2 shoes, 2 socks, 2 pants legs. And, well, to even you out, you probably have to cut it off. So we ended up, I ended up complaining. Teach the people you serve that it's okay to complain. It's nothing personal. I was worried it was going to be taken personally. But we eventually figured things out. Transfer board, bungee cords. Sometimes you just have to MacGyver it, as I called it. I've never used a hairpin and a chewing gum wrapper, but bungee cords, rope, and a transfer board, suction cups, duct tape. Duct tape, I'm telling you, duct tape works for everything. Keeps that wheelchair, even when your wheelchair brakes work, if you're on a slick floor, you can get one of those industrial mats. That keeps it from sliding. Transferring in and out of bed, I use a bungee cord to hook it to a part of my chair, wrap it around, and then on one of our rails of the headboard, if you don't have a solid headboard, has rails, or is a brass bed with rails, you can wrap that bungee cord around those rails. And it stays pretty sturdy. You just have to not be in a hurry. That's the biggest thing. But I also learned through that process with the bungee cord and the wheelchair that life can be a lot like a Chinese or a Japanese proverb that goes, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Well, I was worried when my older wheelchair was having problems with its brakes and the tread. It was really time for a new wheelchair. I was in that transition waiting for the new wheelchair. And they weren't going to fix the brakes if I was waiting for the new wheelchair. And they weren't going to give me new treads on an old wheelchair if I was waiting for a new one. So I worried that every time I called an EMT to help scrape me off our nice wood floor, that the 8th time I might end up in a nursing home. Every time they would come and help, I would cry. Am I going into a nursing home? No, are you okay? Yeah, I'm just waiting on a new wheelchair. Well, that's not your fault. We need to figure out how to keep you from falling in the meantime, but you did the responsible thing. Instead of just laying there, you called for help. A lot of people, when they fall in their homes, are going to be afraid to reach out to you because they're going to be afraid that they'll go back into that congregate care. The first order of business is to try and figure out what's caused the falling and what can you fix to keep it from happening. So, these are some points that I want you to be sure and take with you. Make room for struggle. Let the butterfly fly. Let the butterfly chew its own way out of its cocoon. and get those creative juices flowing so it can fly. Tap that person's experience, their ingenuity, their own creativity. And if they don't have any experience, or they're afraid to say, use some other creative experiences that you've had with another client and say, you know, I had a client in a similar situation, but what do you think about this idea? Could this work? Maybe. They're just as much an expert as you on a problem-solving team, because it is about them. Provide enough support so a person can achieve the most. Just enough support, not too much and not too little. And it's a balancing act. It's not just going to be like that bead that stays balanced. It's going to teeter and totter back and forth, and you're going to need to lower and upper, you know, raise the hours that you work and the amount of people that they need to work for them. It's not about you or anyone else. It's about that individual. Nothing personal about working in service provision. Since I'm getting ready to get my MSW, I'm going to be a service provider. I'm going to be on the other side of the desk. Try to see it from their perspective. How would you want to be treated? How would you want to be listened to? How would you want to be involved in your own care and in your own transition? Remember that every client is different. Even if you share, well, you know, I had a client with this situation, and we did this. Do you think that would work? Don't be surprised if it doesn't work. Because no two people with the same disability, same wheelchair, same equipment, same age, same everything, no two are alike. We're all going to need different things. Use certain weaknesses as a progress point, not a stopping point to transition. Use that as a learning opportunity. Where's the fear coming from? Where is the uncertainty coming from? Why is there a gap in that particular service? And how can we fill it in another way? Whether it's through a government agency, a nonprofit agency, a church agency. The buddy system, somebody in their community that would be willing, somebody in their family that would be willing to help and not crowd. Look for multi-purpose services and partnerships everywhere, as I mentioned, throughout the community. In every aspect of the community, all ages, all abilities. Surviving is important, thriving is elegant. It's one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou, and it's apropos for this situation. We all want to survive, but even more than that, we want to thrive. And my papers are sticking together, excuse me. Disability is an art. It's an ingenious way to live. Disability isn't a tragedy. Disability is not a bad thing. Aging is not a bad thing. If I'm lucky, since I was supposed to die, a lot of the women in my family live in their 90s. I'm sorry, sweetie. If I'm lucky, I get to live that long. You're never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. So no matter how old the people you serve are, no matter how difficult their challenges seem, it's never the wrong time, never the wrong circumstance to dream a new dream. Maybe they want to do more than just live at home. Maybe they want to be active in their community after they get home. Because independence is about more than I just want to live at home and don't want to be in this nursing home or this group home or whatever. It's about being a part of the community once you're out there. Because nobody wants to sit at home and eat Cheetos and just watch TV. Well, most of the time not. Most of us want to be part of the community. Any questions? Comments?
Thank Thank you, Monica. I really appreciate your taking the time to share your own personal insight about a very, very important topic. So thank you. And Brian, I got to say, man, thanks for being part of the story. Who knew we'd know so much about your all's relationship before noon, before lunchtime, But again, thank you all for so much for being, frankly, living examples of a lot of the things that we as human service workers and people who are supporting people to transition into community life are hoping to help people achieve. So thank you.